Hello, my online friends. Thanks for watching and tuning in today. Welcome back from Christmas. I hope you had a great holiday. I did. You can see I got some new things, some things in the back there, and there's like a little board that says like and subscribe. A couple new things for Christmas. I'm wearing a new shirt. I hope you guys had a great Christmas. I am tuning back in this week because I saw something with some amazing people just before Christmas. It was an event with Tucker Carlson, Charlie Kirk, James O'Keefe, Seamus Coughlin, Ian Crossland, Tim Pool, all around a table talking about a range of topics that touched on things like election PsyOps and how to escape the next election PsyOp. The RNC, of course, there's conservatives on there. Tucker on talking about truth setting us free. Luke bringing up warmongers and how Trump affected things, and them talking about the J6 innocent people that have been arrested, choosing to obey God, not men, talking about UFOs in the demonic realm, talking about the creative forces, the life force, talking about neural net and AI, and some of the recent stuff that James O'Keefe has uncovered. I am going to address these topics because I think they're so telling of what we need to talk about today, because there's so many things there that are palpably important for us all, either side of the border, Canada, US, things that are affecting us all. Interestingly, here in Canada, which is where I am, we have Liberal Party that has just taken on some new PR tactics, which are really echoing the DNC's tactics. And the funny and ironic thing is that the very thing that they are doing is what they are claiming the other side is doing. So they're attacking Pierre Poilievre, who's the front runner against Justin Trudeau in the next election. And Pierre Poilievre has been gaining a lot of momentum lately.
On the topic, I mean, in terms of your sort of strategy currently, you're obviously taking the populist pathway.
What does that mean?
Well, appealing to people's more emotional levels, I would guess.
So now what they're doing is they're attacking his movement as being a U.S. influenced MAGA Republican movement, and they're trying to label everybody as MAGA Republican alt-right conservatives, and that anybody that's in Pierre's team are these, whatever that means, these MAGA Republicans. And of course, the very tactic that they're using is what the DNC, so the Liberal Party has become the DNC North. They are importing the U.S. political side. In fact, they've had Hillary Clinton at their last convention. Joe Biden, of course, has been here. He called Canada China in his speech by accident.
Hey, I applaud China for stepping up. I applaud Canada. You can tell what I'm thinking.
Oops. And it's just interesting that it's the kettle calling the pot black. They are employing the tactics. It's always that projection, right, from the left. They project what's happening, what they're doing. They say the other side is doing, and they point fingers. So there's very much a tie between what's happening in the U.S. and what's happening in Canada. We are, of course, huge allies with each other, but the influence of the U.S. media on the Canadian environment is huge. Also, the way that politics interacts is huge. So these stories that they're talking about with Tucker and Charlie Kirk and James O'Keefe and Seamus Coughlin are very much applicable on both sides of the border. And so I wanted to just kind of break this down into a series because there's just way too much to cover in one go. So today I want to talk about their segment on how to escape the next election PsyOp. And they actually talk about X, or Twitter as it used to be called, or Twix as some people call it now. Let's just take a look at some of what they're saying and dive into it and analyze it. And please like and subscribe. Make your comments below what you're feeling about some of this discussion. I'm always interested to hear perspectives. The people on the board are largely conservative, libertarian, and maybe some left-leaning views from Ian Crossland. Tim Pool's kind of center-left. Ian Crossland's kind of center-left. However, they're considered alt-right by the far left. Just the dynamics of our politics today. So these are the discussions that are happening in this scene in the RNC world, in the Republican convention, and this is actually TPUSA, which is, capturing a lot of younger Republicans and more of that conservative voice. So this is kind of coming from that perspective. Of course, I'm a conservative here in Canada. I don't really fall into the conservative party per se, but I am feeling that Pierre Poilievre right now is the best choice for us for Prime Minister in Canada. There's a lot of cross thoughts here and things that are affecting us, including this election issue with Twitter, and how in the previous election things were shut down. You weren't allowed to say certain things. People were being banned for speaking truths, and even things like the Hunter Biden laptop story was shut down completely, which would have changed the election. So it was really election interference what happened in the old Twitter and other social media platforms. Of course, now that Elon Musk owns it, it's a whole new ballgame, because he's allowing free speech as much as possible while still cracking down on things like the child sex trafficking stuff that was going on Twitter before he bought it. He's been cracking down on that stuff while allowing more free speech and bringing people that have been banned back onto the platform. And so it's kind of become a large social media platform that's allowing free speech, as opposed to the other platforms which have been cracking down on views that are disagreeable to the MSM mainstream left, is primarily who's been controlling the voice of society. Lots of interesting discussion. Let's just dive right into it. I'm going to switch over to Charlie Kirk. Hopefully I've got good volume. We'll try it here.
We need to be prepared. I think that demanding open source or free software voting like code like AGPL3, so at least we can look at the code. It doesn't mean that people can't hack into it, and that might still be an issue, but at least we know that the machines are doing what they're supposed to do.
Okay, so just to clarify, they're talking about how there's been a lot of discussion over electronic voting machines, tabulators, the sheer untrustworthiness of those platforms, where it's been proven they can be hacked. They have the ability to miscount things, which has happened in the last 2 elections at least, probably more than that, in multiple locations, and that's all come out in court cases and stuff like that. So they're just talking about that we need a much more open system where you can clearly see where things have been, played with.
If we're going to use those.
Yeah, I mean, no country serious about democracy would ever use an electronic voting machine, and many don't, because anything digital can be manipulated. Look at Wikipedia. Look at the internet, where entire portions of history are now gone. So I would, I would just demand that we have no electronic voting machines. Why would you even want to worry about that? But I would say that you don't want to give the other side credit for being straightforward or honorable, because they're not. And so it's not a question of convincing anyone. The argument against Trump in 2020 wasn't a wall is bad. You can't make that argument. The argument was, he's a bad person. And then we had COVID, which of course was the kind of pivotal fact of that election. So I think you have to assume, if we have another pandemic or a war, particularly a war between now and election day, that is either, an intentional act to subvert our democracy, or it certainly will be harnessed for that use. So I just wouldn't assume that it's going to come at you straight and head on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we have to understand, people don't relinquish power peacefully. The establishment has a lot of power that they're abusing right now. We're dealing with criminals. We're dealing with individuals that have committed PsyOps, that have committed horrible atrocities on the people.
So you can see Luke's We Are Change. He always has his T-shirts. Epstein didn't Epstein himself. So they're talking about what some people would call conspiracy theories about how the previous election happened during the time of COVID, and COVID was used to change laws irregularly to send out millions and millions and millions of ballots in the U.S. where there was a lot of potential for fraud to happen, and many people say that it was the most unsecure fraudulent election. Meanwhile, people in authority are saying this is the most secure election that we've ever had. And so the left will use some sort of tactic like this to manipulate how votes are cast, and the right perceives that as an attack on democracy and an attack, a way of subverting the election. And it can arguably be stated that this is exactly what happened during the COVID, where we saw the strangest anomalies in election history that I've ever seen. And most people agree that it was highly unusual, though some will say not a direct, stealing of an election, but more of a fortification, is what the left calls it, with their cabal, as they stated in that Time article, where they, told all the things that they did to change the course of the election, which, in itself was bizarre, and just so different than previous elections that one could say it was a type of stealing of the election. So, and in fact, you weren't allowed to say that on YouTube at all after this election until just recently, as the 2024 election approaches. Now you can suddenly talk about fraudulent elections again, but you weren't allowed to talk about the 2020 election because that was not a fraudulent election according to the mainstream left. And it's interesting how they have been putting pressure on free speech, or supposedly free speech, platforms to not allow that type of speech, including YouTube itself, and other platforms. Here we are today. We are going into 2024, and what are we going to deal with now? Is there going to be some sort of major event that happens again, which allows for even further changes to the electoral process in the US that would end up resulting in, another huge shift and change in how the votes are received and counted and all that type of stuff? Hopefully not, but the fear is there. And what's that saying? Don't let a good crisis go to waste. I'm trying to remember the right phrasing of that, but basically this is a statement that has been stated on the left, that they will use a crisis to their advantage, and they're very good at doing that. And so if there's another crisis, is it manufactured? That's the question, right? So let's continue watching.
Of the world that have started wars, that have started literal gene splicing, chemical, biological warfare against the people. So we have to understand there's going to be something that's going to be happening here that we should be absolutely paying attention to as we're dealing with essentially a multi-trillion-dollar propaganda machine. But it is being wrecked by posters and memes. Yeah, it is being destroyed by individuals speaking truth to it. It is being destroyed by individuals coming together, coalescing, and saying enough is enough of this bull crap. I am done. My life has value. I am standing up for myself. I am standing up for this country. And that is a danger to the establishment that they fear. And in that fear, we're dealing with a cornered animal. That cornered animal is dangerous, and they could act out in many different ways. And they're capable of anything. They're capable of something that we can't even imagine.
Luke's just cranking it right up to 11 right when we get started, so I can respect
the way you phrased that, by the way.
But in terms of what Tucker was just mentioning about war, I'm hearing a lot of talk about a potential full-scale war with Russia as something that could potentially subvert us in 2024.
Well, war means war powers for the people waging the war. So these are people who think only in terms of power, acquiring it, preventing you from having it. So they see it, you see war in terms of its human cost or maybe its geopolitical effect. They see war in terms of their own fortunes and their own power. So don't underestimate the ability of a government at war to use its new powers to criminally crush its opponents.
There's a journalist by the name of Steve Baker, who is a contributor to The Blaze, who has tweeted that he was instructed to turn himself in tomorrow for charges related to January 6th. This guy, you see a picture of him, he's wearing a suit, he's got glasses, he looks like your quintessential journalist. Richie McGinnis, who's a friend of ours and also a journalist who worked for The Caller, said this guy is unambiguously a journalist, and he told him only a few months ago, they'll never arrest you for this, but now they're doing it.
So how about no? When is the first person going to stand up and say, this is fake, This is political. I'm not submitting. I mean, I don't know. At some point, they're going to force people to do that. Everyone in this room believes in the system, grew up in the system, was proud of the system for its unique fairness.
So I'm going to skip ahead, but I mean, these are important discussions because this is exactly what's happening. Of course, it's the left that says that Trump or his ilk would do something to, in fact, they constantly accused him of that, right? That he would imprison reporters and not allow reporters opposing him to question him, that he was a tyrant somehow. And of course, none of that ever happened. He never did that, but they are doing this. And they are putting reporters like this reporter that was there at J6 and others, even though they did not even enter the Capitol or were involved in that, they were just there to report, throwing them in jail, and shutting down conversations online, doing all these type of things that they say. And right now, they're trying to take Trump off the ballot, trying to take their own opponent off the ballot so that he can't even be elected by the people. So it's interesting how the tyranny is actually coming from the side that's saying that the other side is doing it. But of course, people on the left don't see it that way, right? They just see Trump as bad, evil, orange man bad, and don't recognize their own horrible politics and how it's destroying and dividing the country. And same here in Canada. We unfortunately have a prime minister who has adopted leftist tactics of dividing and calling names. We saw this during the trucker convoy. He called, he basically took on Hillary's basket of deplorables type comment and applied it to the truckers and anybody opposed to the vaccine mandates as being misogynist, racist, white supremacists, neo-Nazis. I forget all the terms that were used. Unacceptable people.
The small fringe minority of people who are on their way to Ottawa or who are holding unacceptable views that they're expressing do not represent the views of Canadians.
Whether their right to exist should even be like just terrible, terrible things for common Canadians that opposed a mandate for a non-tested vaccine and felt that it didn't need to apply to everybody like it did. And so they had questions about that and started protesting. And of course, he would not address the protesters directly, but sent his mob to attack and steal money out of their bank accounts, do all types of stuff that was just set Canada back on the world stage, was over the top, never seen before, crazy. Now he's feeling the backlash of that as the populace, that and other policies that have led us down an inflationary path to destruction, where Canada is falling apart, the division is growing, and he doesn't recognize that he himself has been the dividing factor. All that being said, I'm getting really political on this podcast, and I apologize for that. That's not normally how I am. But I really feel like we have to address these issues and do it in such a way that we can make our countries better. In the States, they want to build back better or make America great again. In Canada, we want to make Canada great again. We want to build Canada back better. But how do we do that? We do that by recognizing our history, that we are a country under God, that we have a heritage of putting godly things on a pedestal, like moral, objective things, families on a pedestal, good things on a pedestal that we want our country to focus on, while minimizing government and government involvement so that the government focuses on the main things, like, keeping the country running, the economy going, the streets in good repair, the infrastructure in place, the ability for the populace to send their message to Parliament and be heard by the MPs and be heard in Parliament. Those are all the things that the government should be focusing on, not all these external, extra, agenda'd, activist type issues that are happening right now and that are dividing Canadians. And so this is what I believe the Conservative Party is heading towards. Like, they want to downsize government and get back into just being for the people and representing the people in Parliament and pulling funds out of these extra things that are costing us so much. This is what we need to do. We need to get back to the basics, and we need to not forget our heritage and bring God back into the fold again, because we are a nation, Canada and the US, under God. In ours, in Canada, we have the Canadian Constitution, which is made up of multiple documents, but specifically the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which right in the first line recognizes the supremacy of God and the rule of law. And those things are tied. We have a rule of law because we have a supremacy of God. We have an ultimate judge. And we seem to be forgetting that in our culture. We're forgetting who we are, where we came from, where the West came from, how we are influenced by the Judeo-Christian principles that created our structure for our society, the fabric of our society, including our hospitals and our education system and how we function as a society in deference to each other, holding all people as a sanctified, the sanctity of life and principles of life, and that, honoring our neighbor as ourselves and loving each other and under the authority of God. If we throw all this away, we are going to lose our societies, and we're seeing this unravel in front of us. So I'm going to skip ahead in this video.
Waiting around is not the solution, because if we just petition them to, hey, please stop electronic voting, we can't see the code, please give us the code, it's not going to happen. We need to build systems that are better. Or in parallel, like, we could vote legitimately on the machine or wherever with paper, and then on a blockchain voluntarily. Like, it would just take a lot of us to do it. And then we could check and see if they're accurate.
Blockchain, interesting.
And that would be one way to move forward.
It is tough. I mean, I agree with what you're saying. I agree with what Tucker was saying. Yeah, let's not have electronic voting machines. Open source the code, do whatever you got to do. But there's a practical question of what can we do right now with less than a year in front of us?
The best thing is use X and Twitter, because it's obviously a threat to them. They wouldn't want to shut it down or go after Elon if it wasn't working. The greatest hope we have in 2024 is we have a sliver of the public square back that we didn't have in 20. And that's why they're going to try to either indict Elon, or they're just going to try to crash Twitter through a DDoS attack or some sort of foreign threat. They're going to try to take Twitter down by the summer.
The EU is going after him now.
Yeah,
they just announced this today,
obviously.
right?
No, people are saying things on...
Okay, so Tim mentioned there that the EU is going after Twitter, and I think I've got this article. Yeah, this is in Associated Press. European Union investigating Musk's X over possible breaches of social media law. So this is happening right now, but the European Union on Monday made Elon Musk's online platform X the first tech company to face an investigation under Europe's tough new regulations designed to clean up social media and protect people from toxic content. Today we opened formal infringement proceedings against X under the Digital Services Act, European Commissioner Thierry Breton said in a post on the platform formerly known as Twitter. So I think I have that as well. Wait, I'll bring up... this is Epoch Times. So Epoch Times is talking about a multi-front attack on Elon Musk. And why is this happening? Well, because Twitter is now free speech. To a point, of course. You still can't make death threats and child trafficking, that type of stuff's being taken down, of course, because there is a limit to free speech when it comes to potentially hurting others. But for the most part, the discussion is open and allowing people to share their truths from their perspective, and including right now with the Palestine conflict. There's a lot of Palestine pro-Palestine supporters on X that are going against the narrative that I would support, which is that Israel has a right to defend itself and has a right to exist. Of course, the other side is being presented, and so people are seeing these arguments from both sides now. Ukraine is another one, the Ukraine-Russia war. There's discussion from both sides, people presenting their arguments. And to me, that's healthy, because when you shut down one side's voice, you can be seen as the controlling factor, actually controlling and promoting disinformation, which has largely been what's been happening. A lot of people see the government shutdown and involvement actually promoting the disinformation. It basically becomes a propaganda wing for the government. And in Canada, we have that on a much higher level because all of our mainstream media is funded by the government, especially our main outlet, which is CBC. And so we see a lot of this happening right now where they're receiving funding, so they're not willing to attack the government. So they're essentially not a free media platform. They're under control of the government that's providing their livelihood. And that doesn't work for free press. So yeah, the Epoch Times just talks about Elon Musk is the world's richest man, but also the number one target of the world's richest governments and their associated industrialists. The reason traces entirely to his independence of mind and the actions that follow from that. In times of censorship, he bought and now protects a free speech platform, the only one remaining with any real reach into the public mind. Countless millions of people are deeply grateful, even if the platform is a long way from profitability. Further, he is innovating in a time of stagnation with Tesla, Starlink, and SpaceX. So the interesting thing with Elon Musk is he was a darling of the left until he bought Twitter and made it an open platform, and then started stating some of his disagreements with the left's woke agenda. As soon as he started doing that, he became a target of the left. So now they're trying to stop people from advertising on X. They're trying to bring cases against Elon. It's just interesting how this is all happening. So this is what this all ties into. I do have that Twitter post from Thierry Breton, the commissaire, European commissaire, if that's the way you say it. So he talks about today we open, is it a he or she? I'm not sure. Today we open formal infringement proceedings against X, suspected breach of obligations to counter illegal content and disinformation, suspected breach of transparency obligations, suspected deceptive design of user interface. And then the very first response you see is Elon Musk, are you taking action against other social media? Because if you have those issues with this platform and none are perfect, the others are much worse. 27,000 likes. Of course, so Elon's ratioed the commissioner of Europe. And then there was a few other things on here. This video is interesting. Somebody made a WEF with Klaus Schwab for Christmas. I want to watch that, but it's not really pertinent to the topic at hand. But yeah, if you're on X, I recommend watching this. Let's take a little sample of it, okay?
Hello, my name is Klaus, the Situation Schwab. This Christmas, cuddle up with your loved ones while you enjoy a delicious holiday feast of new ferns and crunchy crickets, and pop in a very special collection of songs. The World Enslavement Forum presents Waxmas Hits 23. I'm dreaming of a great reset.
Okay. Okay. Enough of that. Let's go back to the Tim cast here and just hear what they're talking about.
on Twitter that you're not allowed to say. And they're going very viral very quickly, and public opinion is changing too rapidly.
Can I just point out, I think it was Dave Smith who pointed this out to us on the show, that before Elon Musk purchased X, if you said men are not women, you would be banned. That actually happened. I mean, it is quite remarkable. To be fair, the gains we've gotten back, I mean, it's a tremendous loss for the fact that we could not say on one of the biggest social media platforms in the world, men aren't women. They actually banned Meghan Murphy for saying that, and just that.
So that was definitely the case. You were banned if you said that. And in Canada right now, we have lawsuits against people that don't support gender ideology. So if you believe that men are men and women are women, you know, biological facts, you could be sued and pay big money because it's seen as a potential harm to those that do believe that. So, clown world, we are in an insane society right now.
It's very innocuous.
I find Twitter is a vulnerability at this moment. The way it's built, the centralized system. So if we can decentralize that thing into a protocol and still use it, and it's fast enough, there's still issues with like Nostr where sending video is slow, but it doesn't mean it's always going to be slow. We can use mesh networks so that if we all have Twitter on our phone and 4 of our phones go down, the other 2 are going to keep the network going.
I do think that, you know, what Turning Point USA is doing right here is one of the most important things. Bringing people together. People are meeting each other all throughout this building and even in the streets, even at restaurants.
Yes.
That culture building is the most important thing because, as we all know, it's been quoted 50 billion times, Andrew Breitbart, politics is downstream from culture.
Someone told me this is like the RNC now. This is basically, why not just this is the RNC, de facto.
Mm-hmm. I can't take that as a compliment. If you might have meant it as an insult. Would you call the RNC, Tucker? It's like NATO. It sucks huge amounts of cash and demands attention and does nothing useful.
Time to abolish it, and it subverts Poland in its. Yeah, comparing anything to the Republican National Committee or Convention is just.
It's an ugly slur.
Yeah.
It's an ugly slur.
I'll take it as what the RNC should be doing.
Say,
exactly.
You know, having been around this stuff my whole life and spent my whole life in Washington, the true corruption of the Republican Party, I don't know, it just took, I was like 10 years behind on that.
Speaking my language.
Remember that, man.
But now that I see it, I'm like, I can't even believe this exists. Because, by the way, in some ways it's more offensive than the Democratic Party because it's lying. The Democratic Party is just like, we're here to hurt you and belittle you, of course. But the Republican Party pretends to be on your side. They're like Quislings, but they're literally, the Republican Congress just allowed the Biden administration to spy on Republican voters. So, like, is there a bigger sign of the fact that they hate you every bit as much as the Democrats?
What I love about this, though, is I agree with you. However, if you are on the, how would I describe this, the lower end of the IQ bell curve, you don't understand what it is Democrats are saying they're doing. So, for instance, when they say they're going to have free trade, it's good for everybody. When they say we're going to increase environmental regulations and increase taxes, to the average person, they're like, this is good. It makes the rich pay their fair share. But to anybody who knows anything, they're like, hey, wait a minute. This is going to drive all of our manufacturing base overseas where they can ship their products back for dirt, pay people in China dirt, and have no environmental regulations. So this is why Trump takes actions when he did in his first term that resulted in a lot of manufacturing coming back. But see, we can understand that. And I'm not trying to be too much of a dick, but there's a lot of people who don't understand the basics. And I'm sorry, but sometimes I do argue with them on X, and they say, you know, I remember this one conversation where a guy said, you know, food comes from the store. And I said, yes, but where does that food come from? He says, what do you mean it comes from the store? And I said, my God, help me.
I'll help you.
I was there for that conversation.
It was
I remember sitting there. It was like,
he's like, what do you mean milk's coming from the store? And I'm like, there's a supply chain.
I think you got to build trust, and it's challenging with someone you disagree with, but if they trust you, they're more willing to change their mind about the things you're saying. And you mentioned, Tucker, about learning about the corruption of the Republican Party, and I kind of watched it in real time on TV in 2006, 7, 8, when the Iraq War was kind of lit up, and I remember you were into it. It seemed like you.
So, yeah, they're getting into some red pill stuff there, where people are recognizing that there is a deep state, there is a uniparty which tends to control things, and in the U.S., there's people on both sides, you know, DNC or RNC, that are there for nefarious reasons. They're bought and paid by very large super PACs, and they're not representing the people that they are supposed to represent. And some of them are locked into positions forever because they're not elected. They're installed. And so it's just interesting how people are recognizing this, and also the military industrial complex, and how all these things are pushing agendas that are then pushed out to public, and there's a narrative that's supported, and if you speak against that narrative, you're ousted, so to speak. Although the internet is making that more and more difficult, of course, and X is one of the reasons. I don't know if you remember, after the 2020 election and the J6 and platforms being locked down, a new platform tried to emerge, and that was Parler. Right, I was just going to look it up. So Parler tried to emerge, and the left attacked Parler, forced them to be shut down by getting them removed off of Amazon servers, getting the app removed from the app stores, and basically Parler had to stop existing. So that was how ferocious the attack was on a potential free speech platform. Of course, at that time, it was largely just people that were absolutely disgusted with what happened with the 2020 election. And so there was a lot of, very right-leaning people on that platform. Twitter is different because it has a solid base of left and right people, both sharing their views very vehemently. And that is good, I think, for discussion in society. And so if you're not on X, I recommend getting on that platform and observing how the news is shared there. Right now in Canada, we have Bill C-18, which has basically kiboshed news on other social media platforms. So on Facebook and Meta, we can't get news anymore. I think it's still on Google, so YouTube and stuff, we can still get news. But there was the potential that it was going to get blocked there as well. I'm not sure what's happening with that. And this is because our Canadian government is trying to force outlets, social media platforms, to pay for the news that they share. And that pay would go to, of course, their propaganda machines, to what they consider legitimate media outlets, like the CBC and, whatever other ones they would include in that. People are in an uproar over that. That's another thing dividing this country right now. It's just ridiculous. And so, yeah, like I say, often pray for Canada. We need your help. I think I'm going to stop this discussion here because it starts going into the next topic. And I'm going to do that in another segment. So please watch. Also, please like and subscribe, like my little board says here. Yes, there. Like and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts on what's being said here. So there's, of course, conjecture and stuff being intonated. There's conspiracy theories, as some say. Of course, we've been seeing a lot of conspiracy theories from the past coming true. And so I saw a meme just today or yesterday saying, it was today actually, saying, I don't post conspiracy theories, I post news headlines that will be news headlines in 6 months. So, and that's basically what's been happening. 3 to 6 months, those conspiracy theories become actual news headlines and turn out to be true. A lot of them have. Of course, some don't. But please like and subscribe, share with your friends, let me know your thoughts, and bless you guys. I hope you had a great Christmas, and I hope you have an excellent New Year as we go into 2024. We're praying for blessings of God on our nations, that we would return. I pray for revival in Canada and the U.S., that people return to God, get ourselves submitted, humble before the living sovereign God, and back into that place where we surrender and love each other and can work towards a positive future for our countries. In Jesus' name, amen. See you guys.